Welcome to Growing Guelph. I'm your host, Jordan Sloggett. Today's guest is Councillor Katherine Hauser, the representative for Ward 6 on Guelph City Council. Katherine joined council fairly recently through the appointment process. We talk about what that was like, what she's learned so far inside City Hall, and what residents should know about how council actually works. We also dig into her Guelph story, her goals for her time on council, and how people in Ward 6 can connect and get involved. And with that, here's my conversation with Councillor Katherine Hauser. All right, well, this week on the Growing Guelph podcast, I'm joined by Katherine Hauser. Katherine, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, you kind of have an interesting story, I think, when it comes to your involvement with City Hall and your seat on the council and that, so we can kind of jump right into it. But I guess before we get into that story, before City Hall, what's your Guelph story? Can you tell us a little bit about your life and work here? Kind of understood that you maybe ran Doogie's and Pablo's downtown. Maybe kind of talk a little bit about your connection to the university, any volunteering, and what sort of shaped the person that you are before council.
Sure. Yeah, so I was known as Mrs. Doogie. My husband, Michael Hauser, ran the bar from 97 until 2012.
Okay.
I came in the picture. We were married in 2002. This is hard. But we met in 2000, so I was kind of on the scene after that. We have 4 children. The youngest is 18 now, so I guess...
All your kids are officially adults?
Yeah, I don't have any kids anymore.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of adults. Right? That's what I say, yeah. So I guess I was always going to go to Guelph and always come to Guelph. I was born in Goderich.
Okay.
And my mother's sister graduated from University of Guelph. I think I was about 4 or 5. So we always were back and forth, and she graduated vet college. So my whole life she was here.
Was it always like your idea of university and that was sort of shaped by
that was the
Guelph
only, I didn't even know there was other ones for a while, yeah. And she used to have this poster of the unicorn, if you've seen it on...
Yeah, that was like a famous anniversary poster that the university
so I had that in my room forever.
Okay.
But then my other aunt went as well, and she's only 7 years older than me, so then I visited campus a few times, and and we were just in Milton at that time, so not too far away. And then when I was 16, we moved to Puslinch, and then very, very shortly after that, I moved to Guelph by myself. So finished up high school here and then started university.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
What kind of, what were you studying at University of Guelph?
I started with history, and then kind of more wanted to know not just the what, but the why. So then I ended up in the political science stream, and then they launched was new, criminal justice and public policy thing. So I was actually part of the first graduating class of that as well.
Oh, that's cool.
So I did political science in the criminal justice program. Yeah.
Yeah.
My last credit that I needed. So when I graduated, I actually had 3 kids already, and we had the business and everything. So it was like busy, right? So I kind of put finishing on hold because I was halfway done my thesis, which was about Russia and NATO, and just seemed daunting, and I couldn't get it done. And then eventually my professor called and he said they did it, and I'm like, what did they do? He's like, you can graduate now because they removed the thesis requirement, and so now you could just take another 4th year course. So
Nice.
I did that, and I was like, okay, let's do it. So yeah, my son was 7 months old when I graduated. So yeah,
Sounds like you had a very busy last year of university.
Yeah, well, I mean, I took a little time off.
Yeah, okay.
Those last few credits took a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, my last credit actually was Karen Farbridge. In between her stint as mayor, and then she wasn't mayor, and then she was mayor again. Okay. She was a professor. And so my last graduating course was with Karen Farbridge, and I took Cities and Sustainability.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and we actually did a paper
That sounds like a very Guelph course.
Very Guelph. Yeah, it was. And our project was, we called it Connecting to Our Core, and it was how can we revitalize downtown and make the rest of the city love downtown. So.
And at the time, was your husband like working at or running?
Yep.
So it's Doogie's and Pablo's are two restaurants that are in the same building, right?
Well, Pablo,
Sorry, I
just
should
Pablo's
say-
is left.
Yeah.
Doogie's is gone now.
Right.
But yeah, there were two bars. It was a restaurant when he opened it. So Doogie's was the bar, and then it was the Pinata was the restaurant.
Gotcha.
And it was Silver Peso before that. I don't know if you remember those back then. But
To date myself, I attended University of Guelph from 2009 to 2013. So that was my introduction
yeah,
to
you would not have known
downtown.
either of those things. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, 97 is when it was Pinata. And then I believe Pablo's was 2000-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I studied sciences at the university, but I will say that some of my favorite classes and some of my best marks were in the humanities and that. So I don't know if I got the wrong degree or not, but there's a lot of interesting things when you study those sorts of things, right? Like, because it really shapes your idea of, well, I mean, you switched from history to political science. So obviously you're someone who's interested in modern events and keeping up with things like that. So I don't know if my cats are going to come through. My cats, I don't know if they've appeared on the podcast yet, but one of them's outside the door. Well, I just fed him, so he's not going to get fed again. So listeners can deal with that. I'm sorry if there's meowing cats in the background. His name's Sirius, if anyone cares.
Oh. He does look very serious.
Yes. Him and his brother, they were adopted, and they both came with star names. So he's Sirius, like the star Sirius.
Okay.
The dog star, and his brother's Orion.
Oh, that's
So,
nice.
yeah. What was I talking about? Oh, so, okay. So that was your, some of your educational background. And
After that, I did, I'm always wanting to keep learning. So I did a forensics certificate. That's when CSI was really cool. And
oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
I did,
The peak of, like,
yeah. So I did that. It was through Mount Royal College at the time. It's Mount Royal University now, but that was kind of the end of my educational career.
Yeah. Were you potentially interested in, like, going into forensics, policing, or something like that?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
My husband wasn't real comfortable with me carrying a gun, so the policing side of it was, but that's where I kind of thought I would go, like policing or something along those lines. Yeah.
It sounds like some sort of
Legal
public
side.
service has always been kind of floating in the,
Yeah, for sure. I would say that.
So you were appointed to represent Ward 6. And sorry, remind me, what are the boundaries of Ward 6 in the city?
So basically from Courtright
Okay.
all the way south, but then when it hits Gordon, it kind of goes a little kitty corner and goes to Arkell and then south.
Gotcha.
So
I'm really trying to change the way I pronounced Arkell. For some reason,
that's
as
right.
a university student, I just, it's Arkell, right? But
Yeah.
Guelphites have corrected me. It's
I
Arkell
saw
Street.
it's Arkell like Sparkle. Yeah, that was in Leanne's and Kathy's newsletter.
Oh,
And it
okay.
finally settled it for me. I was like, finally, now we know which it is. Yeah, Arkell like Sparkle.
So you were appointed in July, so this past summer of this year, after an open call, there were candidate presentations, and then there was a tied council vote, and then there was a name draw tie break. What did that process feel like from you? And what did you learn about, like, our local democracy that night?
It was actually really surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once it was a tie vote, and I actually feel like I willed it into the universe. You ever think something and then it happens and you're like, why did I think that? Because it happened. But when so I was on the school board before, and when we had the election of our chair, it went to a tie, and it's called drawing lots, and I had no idea what that was. But it's not a good way to win. It's not a good feeling, you know.
Right.
Like you work really, really hard, and you don't really feel like you were successful necessarily. It feels like you got lucky.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Probably similar feeling like when sports teams, when they win due to like a shootout or something like that, where
Yeah.
you're like, well, I mean, you could say you brought it to the tie, right?
Yes,
So it wasn't like, but
Yeah.
that's,
it is confusing for people because they just read, oh my gosh, that's how they picked the person, and like it wasn't. That's not how it was. It was a lot of work. Like we everybody that was there, you know, had to give their 5-minute speech, and everyone was so well prepared, and you know, it was. it didn't feel finished properly. You know?
How well did you know if you did at all know your other candidates that you were up against?
I knew a couple, but no,
Yeah.
not many. Yeah.
So looking back at the vacancy process, what parts do you think worked well in terms of like transparency and fairness? And if council had to do it again, how would you like? Would you have any ideas to tweak the process or like kind of strengthen the public confidence in it?
I think like my view was probably a little bit kind of skewed in like I was kind of watching for it, and so I was paying much more attention. I think people who are caught off guard just like they went through all the correct channels to like advertise it. I mean, they had 26 people that put their name forward, so it had a lot of attention.
Yeah.
So the people that were caught off guard and didn't understand what was happening just missed it, I guess.
That kind of
it's hard to say because, like I said, I was hyper aware and I was watching for it, so I saw it everywhere.
That's kind of an interesting thing when it comes to, I mean, politics on any level, where there's people who are tuned into it and they understand the language of it and the ebb and flow of it and the people involved and how things happen. And then there are people who are just sort of like, they get the headlines every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's algorithms are different too. Right?
Yeah, especially these days with social media, the way like our news isn't even allowed on social media, which I think is kind of awful for our public awareness and that. Like, but I mean, I've tried to become more interested in politics and things like that. I'd say in the last couple of years. But certainly when I was young, I was not at all tuned into, like I grew up in Niagara Falls, Ontario, and I was barely plugged in. Like I think I could have told you who the mayor was. Could not have told you anything about our particular councillors. Did not have much of a sense of city politics at all. And then when I came to Guelph, I think maybe this is true of like a lot of people to university, but I felt more like I came to the university and then I lived in the city, but my world was campus. And then after like first year, you move to like a student neighborhood and you kind of become aware of that, but I still didn't feel like a citizen of Guelph yet. And part of that's because as a student, you still have like a foot firmly back in your hometown and you go back there for the summer. And like, I could not have told you who the mayor was when I was a university student, but that could have also just been the fact that, like I said, I was studying the sciences. So my head was not in that space. So I don't know if that's universal. Like, what were you like as a student? Were you fairly plugged into, like, could you have said who the mayor was, and were you a little bit more plugged in that way? Yeah.
I was always watching. Even when I was little, I used to watch like Queen's Park on TV.
Oh wow.
Well, I mean, okay, to be fair, we had 3 channels, and so there was time when that's all you could watch. So
that is fair. It is very different. The different households that get. Well, I like you're just gonna say. My wife grew up in the countryside where she had same thing. She had like 3, 4, or 5, and your access to media when it's like you really get a sense of what's on those channels versus I think when I was like 8 or 9 the cable opened up to, we had everything up to like channel 60 something. So just had a lot more options. All this still sounds like weirdly quaint and antiquated in that like now, but at the time, I had no shortage of entertainment. And did you grow up in a household where that was like?
So I was an only child, and I don't know, my stepfather was always talking about what was happening. Yeah. So it was always dinner conversation, and newspaper was always around, and just always pay attention to what is going on. I really wanted to be one of those pages at Parliament. But I loved that. It looked so cool. I applied, but I didn't get accepted, I guess. So. And I think it was like year 11 or something at that age. Yeah.
Are the pages you see them when like the classic shot? They're all standing
in front of the speaker?
Yeah, the very young people you see standing there that are...
I thought that was so cool.
And are they like mostly like what are their jobs? Are they kind of like running memos around?
Yep.
Or they've got...
Yep. They pass notes or they'll maybe get waters or something like that. Yeah.
I did one trip, I think in grade 10, as part of like history class, we did a trip to Ottawa. So that I have some vague memories of that. And I think Parliament was undergoing some construction at the time. This would have been in like 2000. Yeah, I guess it's permanent construction. Now they're like really digging it up now, but that would have been in like 2004, 2005. So yeah, it sounds like you've always been someone kind of plugged in. Now that you've been part of City Council for, how many months has it been? What, 6 months? 5 months?
4.
4 months? Has it been like a whirlwind
Yeah,
or yeah?
that's why I don't know how long it's been.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it
fair.
has been a whirlwind. And at first, the pace was really nice because they did. I mean, August, council doesn't sit; it's off. So
So that's kind of a good time to join in,
it
right?
was because I had all that time to do the onboarding.
Yeah.
But it was very methodical and relaxed, and it was, I'd meet these people, and I was learning a lot. But then once it gets into the actual cycle of council, that's when I really was like, oh, this is like, now I'm getting into, committee of the whole. Then we have planning, and then there's council. Now I know the flow of it. August was just meeting all of the different like department heads and who does what and all the managers, and so that's a lot.
Yeah, I guess because like on top of the political process, there's all this
it's all the background.
city bureaucracy,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah.
like
Yeah. So it's like the school board. There's like the structure is exactly the same. It's just that instead of having like our one financial guy, it's a financial department. And so that's big. And like
Yeah.
operations isn't just, like custodial and the fleet and stuff. It's massive.
all the stuff that has to happen in
Yeah.
the city to make
Yeah.
it functional, right?
Yeah, it's everything. So yeah, the magnitude is a bit overwhelming, honestly, but
Yeah.
it's good. This has been the last little bit. Remember when we first were trying to schedule, I'm like, oh, Wednesdays seem to be really open. Wednesdays are great. And then all of a sudden, Wednesdays were, I haven't seen a Wednesday. It's just every time. Because my calendar just kind of magically does things. Like, things come through and I just go, yep.
Yeah.
I'm saying yes to everything. So I'm just, yep. And then my calendar is like insane. But
Have there been like colleagues on council who have kind of helped you navigate the process?
everybody's been phenomenal, actually. Yeah.
That's good.
Like, really, really great. That's what I was going to say about, to double back there, about the process.
Mm-hmm.
So it was actually a live vote. Like, it wasn't like a secret ballot or anything. So I know who like didn't vote for me. So that's kind of a bit awkward at first.
Right. So this is sorry, just I guess to explain to myself and to listeners who might not know, is that the other existing councillors
Voted.
and like they're the ones who they're the ones that created the tie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was 6-6.
Right.
So,
So you know which of your future colleagues are going to be. I guess are they colleagues in government or are they just fellow representatives? Right, like you're working together to run the city.
For
but
sure.
yeah.
Well, I know that a couple like in prior conversations, because I did call everyone to like just kind of pitch myself basically, and a couple said, well, if I don't vote for you, would you still be comfortable working with me? And I was like, of course. Like, everybody's going to pick who they think is the best, and whoever is the best they will pick, who they think is going to do the best job.
Yeah.
People have different ideas of what that is.
Yeah.
Very strong ideas about what that is. So it was just, I just felt like I wanted to like prove myself that I do belong here,
Right.
But when they invited me into the horseshoe, the first two people that shook my hand did not vote for me. So I thought that was actually really great.
Yeah, gracious of them, I guess.
Yeah, it was just really inviting. Like,
Yeah.
they understood the process. They're very professional. It wasn't going to be like, oh, I didn't vote for you, so I'm not sitting with you.
Yeah.
It was
and I guess once
immediately.
it's decided, it's sort of like,
Yep.
well, decisions were made, but like at the end of the day, you have to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what everything is. Like, votes have gone this way and that way, and once the vote is done, it's done.
Yeah.
There's no point in rehashing it at that point because it can't change.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, there's been some really great conversations, and I can ask anyone anything, especially about history. So there was one email that came in August, and it was just about water. It was about 2 lines. It was just a little update.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody else knows what that's about and is like, oh, cool, or whatever, I spent 5 hours to try to figure out what was happening.
And was some of that like you didn't want to like? It seems like you're the type of person that wants to exhaust all the resources that you can before saying like, "Hey, someone explain to me what this means."
Well, see, I didn't realize that I could just be like, "Hey, what should I read
Right.
to get that?" So I went back and I read. I found it on like a couple of agendas. There was actually a whole workshop. that was put on. So I watched that whole workshop and then watched the council meetings, read the minutes. So just to get caught up on what the little tiny update was. But now I know that I can just be like, hey, and like Leanna's great for that. Kathy's great. Linda's really great for that. But for like the history stuff, like I can ask Cam, do you remember what this was about? And he's like, oh, for sure, I'll find it. He's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's been great. Yeah.
I guess city governance is interesting in that we don't have political parties officially on the city level, but obviously you get a sense of where people stand on various issues in that, right? And probably who your ideological allies are and things like that, right? But like you probably already had a good sense of the lay of the land that you were walking into, right? Being someone who's plugged into city politics.
Yeah, I don't think I think I'm way more center than, like, when I was first elected, the chatter was the lefty loonies. And so
There's
I was a lefty loony.
Yeah.
But, yeah, whatever.
But it's so hard. And I find myself doing this all the time on this podcast, is that like social media has done something to our brains where we're all kind of
polarized.
we're responding to this like very vocal, not a person, but very vocal people who make their opinions known online. The same sort of people who any news story about the new library, and they'll just be people like, how are you spending all this money? And like it's so hard because social media and internet comments, they have a way of like putting everyone's opinion on a equal playing field, when in a more traditional, maybe like town hall style or in a public setting, different people's like opinions hold, the way that they might share those opinions would hold different weight, both good and bad. And it would be more obvious in person, where you could say like, oh, this like learned person, and again, there's baggage that comes with that of like dismissing people because they're don't look educated or don't look whatever. But there was more of a sense of like whose opinions to take serious and who's sort of just a crank shouting from their soapbox. But when you're reading like Reddit comments, you don't get that sense. Everyone looks like everyone's spell checked. Everyone's like, and it's easy to just sort of you just get this sense that like, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it's like, I think it's easy to overestimate some opinions and underestimate others. And there's a certain like cranky opinion that sells well on social media. And by sells, I just mean like it engages with people. And sometimes you have to remember that like, oh, right, that's what's being sold to you on social media, like Facebook comments.
Rage bait,
yeah, the rage of it all, right? And even the individuals know that, where the person whose opinion is just like, oh, I don't really have much of an opinion on this. And that could person like, or they could, their opinion might be like, yep, sounds like good initiative that needs to happen. That might be where like, if you could actually poll all of Guelph, like every voter in Guelph, that might be where like 75% of people fall. But that's kind of a boring opinion that's not going to get any like a lot of likes on social media.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go anywhere. But the extreme opinion on one way or the other is the thing that gets attention on both sides. So you get both sides of the political spectrum responding to the most egregious, like most loudest, most hateful, most bigoted, like, you know what I mean? And it just, we end up feeling so negative about the quote unquote other side of the political aisle, largely because we're both fighting each other's like the worst qualities or the worst opinions on the other side that just aren't really that fair, right? And like you said, like if there was messages out there that like the lefty loony one, and it's like, well, I kind of feel like there are some people who their opinion might be like, if you don't have a big F Trudeau sticker on the back of your truck, then you're a lefty loony,
That's
right?
what I mean.
Like if you ever wore a mask during COVID, you're a lefty loony. And it's like, well, if your definition of lefty loony would encompass like 65-70% of Guelph, then like it's not really a very useful definition, is it?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think all of Guelph has a very strong like social ties and environmental ties, and we all do care very much about it. We're green.
Yeah. And that's interesting. Even those environmental ties, like this has been talked about, but the environmentalism and some of that deeper, like more stereotypical hippie, whatever that means to you, ideas, that kind of spans both sides of the political spectrum, right? Political spectrum in general is like politics is too big, and our world is too big of a and complex of a thing to really narrow down to just left, right. And I know people come together with all kinds of spectrums to put stuff out there, but
that's
like,
what, I find that so, it's disheartening how dichotomized it is, because there is a center ground, there is a middle ground.
Exactly.
We can find it.
And people themselves are multitudes, right? Like if you sit down and talk to any individual person, like very rarely are they going to say like, I'm on this side, therefore, like just look at look at XYZ political party, that's all of my beliefs. Like, no, like they probably have beliefs that, they could agree with members who they would maybe disagree about some things with, but like distilling these things down to labels often isn't very helpful, which I guess is a bonus or a good thing about our city politics, that we don't just see a quote from a councillor and say, oh, what party are they from?
Yeah.
What's the letter next to their name? Like, should I believe them or not? Should I care about what they have to say or not?
Yeah.
So you've talked about this a little bit, but you came in with the governance experience as part of the Upper Grand District School Board. You were a trustee for Ward 6 in Puslinch.
Yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about like the skills that you think transferred cleanly, and then what's been surprisingly different. You kind of talked about the scale differences,
scale and
but
volume.
like what's just like
Yeah.
very different about decision making at City Hall?
The biggest shift is that I was getting really confident at the school board, and so now I'm just brand new again.
Yeah.
So that's a big shift. But I was, like, at the school board, I was vice chair of the board, so I did attend every meeting that there was. I mean, unless I couldn't for some reason. So I had kind of my hand in all of what was happening.
Right. And you understood everything that was happening to a degree. Like you have that awareness, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just read everything that I could. Again, the volume is, there might be, a 12-page memo for the school board preparing for well, honestly, there was bigger ones, but on average, it was pretty mellow reading. We get, 200-page things. And then Board of Governors, like 500 pages. That's ridiculous. That's a whole nother story. But it's volume. And what I really found the most challenging right now is because we're doing budget. So budget is this huge thing, but nothing else stopped. So we still had committee of the whole. We still had, the planning meetings. We still have all of the other things going on. And I'm just like, wait, but we're doing the budget. Like, shouldn't we just focus on this for now? But no, we keep rolling.
Yeah, everything else has to keep going, right?
Yeah. So that's been the most challenging, just trying to wrap my head around all of it, but then understand that the world still keeps turning. We still have to, have council on Tuesday.
So I feel like I'm someone who's like not entirely unplugged from council things, but I'm not as aware as I could be. So I get some of the stuff kind of floats into my media feed, and that is the fact that council's been working on budget right now. Why I've seen some quotes from the mayor about like potential property tax raisings and that like that are going on. Are you like, have you found that it's a unique position being like a city councilor versus your previous experiences in terms of sharing your opinion publicly with things? Like when you share your opinion, it kind of becomes news, and like, I don't know if you have like an existing relationship with city journalists, or like, I don't know, what's that been like for you? Do you find yourself having to like censor yourself, or just like think consciously as like, oh, am I sharing my opinion as a person versus as a city councilor? Like what's that been like?
I haven't really been speaking, well, except for right now, speaking about it like openly or publicly, just like in the actual meetings, or there's a lot that happens, like just so much reading and then questions and questions. And we have a budget board, and I camp out on the budget board reading everything, which is actually really, really great. There's so many questions that I wouldn't have thought to ask, but I don't have to because they're all right there. And so it just makes you delve so much deeper into all of the information that is presented. Like when I first read the budget, it's like, just what do I do with this? Like, it's a
Yeah.
lot of information. But then you see one person ask a question, and then, oh, that hyper focus on that for a minute, and then you can get it. And then it took a bit.
Yeah.
Because it was, it's a big document. And then just to finally get where it's going, and then to dig in and like look at actual, figures and numbers and projections, and it's the whole province is in a rough spot, and the school board was in a rough spot.
Yeah.
It's not a great time, honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
and that's such a challenge, right, for politicians, because, I mean, if you look at some of the negative, and I don't want to keep going back to the negative comments, but you see like the negative sentiment in the air where people sort of feel like, oh, Canada's been in an awful place, and it's been because of 10 years of Liberals being in power federally. But then you kind of take a step back, and it's like, yeah, but how many other first world similar sized democracies are facing like the exact same problems as us? Mm-hmm. And if like Australia and like New Zealand and Great Britain and the States to some degree, like if there's these patterns, then like obviously these aren't
it's not just one. Yeah,
exactly. And I think you can get so zoomed into just Canadian politics and like what we're doing that, yeah, like so obviously there's these bigger world event things that are happening, but people get really dialed into politics. Mm-hmm. City politics is no doubt a similar thing, right? Where if you're really into city politics and you get into this idea of like all of our problems are Cam's been mayor for XYZ number of years, but it's like, well, Cam's not causing the trends that are happening that every city of our size is dealing with, right? Mm-hmm. And like, Guelph is a particular sized city. A huge amount of our economy is like the auto industry. Like I think I saw us ranked maybe number 1 on a list of like
most vulnerable.
Exactly. Yeah. And like that's scary.
It is very scary.
But like if that were to happen, you can almost predict the political fallout that would be like, when I say if that's going to happen, as that continues to happen, because America has made, like their goals of crushing our auto industry clear, it causes a lot of resentment. And then there's a certain large segment of our population that doesn't pay attention to politics until there's a reason to be mad. Mm-hmm. And then it begins to impact them. And then they say, why did I lose my job? And then you get populist oppositional people coming out saying, vote for me, because obviously the people in charge are the ones that, like, I guess it's a frustrating cycle to see when you're more plugged into politics, because you sort of just see like,
well, it's the whole running against something instead of for,
right?
Like, and also that I think really misguided idea that, as soon as we replace this person, everything's going to be rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah.
Now. But it's not how that works. Everything takes time. Things build to a point where, it's difficult. We're in a difficult spot.
Yeah.
And you have to make certain decisions and hope that like you can get out while protecting everything that you need to protect at the same time.
Yeah.
So.
And like even just the amount of infrastructure that cities are now responsible for maintaining that, 100 years ago didn't even exist, and now every new neighborhood and new development has to pay for. And there maybe was a time where the constant building and increase and sprawl of things could pay for that new development, because you could pay to replace the old pipes because the new neighborhood would be coming in. And and we're kind of learning some of the repercussions of like what that sprawl has done to our economy, and like, and then like cities go through these cycles, like larger political things, right, where people get mad about the state of their, like, for example, property taxes. So maybe a whole bunch of new city councilors are voted in out of anger, and then the new councilors come in and they just want to like slash. And for a little while, the like property tax maybe does go down for a bit, but then all of that just results in years of neglect and services going bad, and people getting, and then it like, people, the same thing happens in reverse, where people say like, why don't we have these services? Why aren't my pipes being cleaned? Why, like, all these things need to happen. And then, I mean, it's just such a wild cycle to be on. I think we're kind of seeing that now, and you can comment out whichever way you want about like federal politics, but like, people talk about how, like in the new budget, Carney is shrinking the size of the federal workforce, but and I say I'm listening to a lot of like AM talk radio lately at my work, so I'm getting a lot of these like conservative talking points, and so I'm hearing them say about how like, well, the conservative, like the federal government grew by like it was like something like 30% during the 10 years of Trudeau, so therefore it would only be acceptable to shrink it by that much. But what they don't talk about is like, well, was there neglect under the Harper years where Trudeau had to increase the size of the federal, like just to get us back to like a baseline? And also, what new things have been introduced that like require those additional people to do things? Like, and yeah, it's a very challenging situation for politicians to navigate. It doesn't seem like you can't please everyone for sure, but
Yeah. I think it's just really important that everybody's like given the opportunity to follow through and like see the thing instead of just having, an immediate reaction. Let's see how that goes,
Yeah.
Like what these decisions that are being made, they're being made for reasons, and we just have to hope that they come to fruition. I guess maybe I'm a little bit hopeful always. So
Well,
I
that's a
always
good
want to see
quality
the
to have,
best
right? I mean, especially as someone
outcome,
who's
yeah.
been studying like politics and interested in it, and now you're part of the system, right? Like,
It doesn't seem real, honestly, though. It really does. It's like when I became a trustee, I was like, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. Like, I'm doing it, so it's no big deal. But I was
Yeah.
like, oh, but council is really cool. And now it's like, I'm doing it. And I was like, oh, it's not really a big deal because I'm doing it.
I guess that's just
Yeah.
like,
It's just, it becomes normalized, I guess.
yeah. Well, a couple months ago on this podcast, I had Dominique O'Rourke, and like,
She's been awesome, by the way. Very, like, she's reached out. She was great when I was a trustee because we would chat about Ward 6 issues. But she's been really phenomenal. I can ask her questions too, and she'll.
that's good that there's still that. Well, I mean, she's had an interesting political story, right? Like from her time as city councilor, and she kind of told me on this podcast that she had just sort of reached a point where she thought her political ambition and goals and what she could do for the city could be increased even further by like setting her eyes, I don't want to say on a higher ground, because I think and I fell into this like before of, it's easy to sort of think of politics as like, well, the federal is the most important, and then provincial is second most important, and then municipal is just like whatever. But like, that's not fair, and that's not actually true.
And it's really important how they work together, and I think that's the breakdown right now. Is what
exactly
we need to get back to working together.
Yeah, and provincial somehow has this way of like sneaking by everyone's, like so much of just like our considerations politically, like people get very focused on the federal level and what's happening because there's just more like attention at that space, and
so
it's kind of mirroring
your lens, because my lens is very focused provincially.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
school board and municipal, very very like strong ties.
And as it should be, because like the province controls so much of our lives and that, right? Yeah. I guess it's just part of it's almost an issue of like social media and online conversation, because just by like the numbers, like just 40 million Canadians, so all of them can engage in this discussion federally versus provincially it starts to break down. But like our provincial governments have so much power over us, and in a lot of ways our municipal governments are like under that jurisdiction, right? Like if people who are trying to, maybe like myself, trying to get a little more interested in city politics, like, but it feels like our like resources just aren't there, like, and I've talked about this on the podcast a lot, like our lack of a proper city newspaper and things like that, like it just makes us, in my opinion, feel a little bit like disconnected from each other.
Well, yeah, and especially what you said earlier about not being able to share news on social media.
Yeah, like that. It's so much of our lives are now like, for good or for bad, like they're happening through these social media platforms.
And nothing's vetted. You don't know if anything's true. You just
and there's
read
so much
whatever.
bad, and like AI is making it so much worse.
Yeah.
Where like I've talked about this in a few episodes now, but like I get YouTube ads that it's like clearly an AI version of Mark Carney selling some cryptocurrency, like. And like, that's a whole new world. Like, that's not something that could have happened in the days of cable television. That's not something that could happen like at the very most, like maybe someone could put something kind of scammy in the newspaper, but even then the newspaper had to vet that.
Yeah.
No one at Google is vetting that.
Yeah.
Like if something's not setting off an auto flag, like they're just letting stuff through, and people are getting scammed. People in Guelph are being scammed by these things, and like even without just the scams taking place, people's opinions and the public trust is just like unraveling.
Well, and see, even when I was young, so we always had the Toronto Star and we'd have the Toronto Sun, and I would find it fascinating to read both
Yeah.
the articles. And I mean, you're just talking about slightly skewed one way or the other.
Yeah.
Now you don't even get, like, if there's things that happen, big things that happen, and you don't even hear about them anymore. That is scary. That's not just like, oh, this has a slightly, right-leaning take on it, or like, a left-leaning take on this one issue that happened. You don't even hear about some things now.
And so much of so much of our media is American owned at the end of the day, which is scary. And like, people don't seem to want to pay for any kind of media because like a lot of us, like myself included, like I've never had my own newspaper subscription. My parents had one of my local paper in Niagara Falls, and then I never needed one because news was always like abundantly free online.
Mm-hmm.
And like
But
Twitter,
now we need them.
Yeah.
Now we need it back. We need newspapers again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have, like, it is nice that we do have some local, like, reporter. Like, I had Adam Donaldson on this podcast, and it's nice to have those voices, but we just need more of them because you need that diversity of thought, right? Like, and it's nice to have that sense of, like, because then you start to understand, like, oh, where do these reporters lean on things? And sometimes it's not even just the biases of how they, like a reporter might talk about things, it's what they're choosing to focus on, right? Because as I've kind of discovered through my recent listening to a lot of AM talk radio, is that they probably do a lot of factual reporting on stuff, but it's just the topics that they choose to focus on is a huge part of like framing the narrative, right? And like kind of riling up public opinion on certain things is just like dialing in and focusing on that is like putting, leaning on the levers of like changing public opinion and public thought.
I think it's really important, like communication and clarity, and just once people take the time to have a conversation and listen, it opens like so much, like opens so many doors. And then they'll tell someone, oh, the reason, I don't know what, like, I don't want to say bike lanes. Okay, let's say bike lanes, because that's a hot topic.
Yeah.
But like, if you only think of it from one side, like there's so many different ways of looking at it, but you only ever hear bad things, or the library bike lanes. Those are like triggers.
Yeah.
And people just lose it. And
Like,
I don't even know if those people are real or are they bots. They're like, we never wanted a library.
That's the hard
like,
part
nobody
of
ever
like
bikes. Like,
yeah. I mean, I just finished 3 different interviews that I had with staff at the library, and it's wild because I mean, I'm someone that I use the library a lot. I love the library. There's a lot of passionate users of the library.
so I work at the library at the university, different library, but
Yeah,
I love
but like
the library.
exactly, and it just feels like those of us that understand the value that the library acts as a third space, as a community spot, that it is a place for everyone, including people that, it might make like their existence might make some people uncomfortable, but those people still exist and they're valid members of our community. And the library doesn't kick them out because the library is not a business. The library is not Indigo. The library is not like a golf country club where they can create a sanitized environment, because Guelph is not a sanitized environment. But I think that weird idea that people have of like, this is sort of a tangent, but just this, people express these opinions of like, instead of thinking like, why does our society, or why has our politics and our everything about society led to people living in encampments downtown, instead of asking that question, or maybe even asking, like, how can I change my politics? How can I change how I vote? How can I change what nonprofits I support? What are the things I can do to help that situation? There's like a feeling of, well, the problem is allowing them to exist. Let's tear down their encampments, put them on buses, and ship them out of town because they don't want Guelph to look like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh, but those people still exist. Those people still live here. They are people's siblings and children and, like
Mm-hmm.
friends. And on top of the people that are visibly unhoused, there's a lot of people that are probably like on the verge of being unhoused, or they, have friends that they can live with, or they have a multitude of friends' houses that they can I mean, COVID, this was a huge thing with COVID, right? Where there was probably a lot of people who were transient enough that, like, they had buddies that they could sleep in a spare room a lot. But then COVID happened, and a lot of people said, like, hey, sorry, I can't let you sleep anymore in this
Mm-hmm.
space. And then people, on top of just the housing crisis and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a frustrating element of our online ecosystems, especially with like the billionaire powers that are influencing what we're seeing on those
Yeah.
platforms. Like, people get this idea of like, oh, I'm plugged in, I see people's opinions, and it's like,
Yeah.
but you don't even know how many of these opinions you're seeing are
And it's
bots and
yeah,
are like,
exactly. And it's just the silos. Like you don't get to see outside your silo to talk
yes,
to anybody else. And that's I think was so important. And that's what I was about. That's what I was saying there about just having conversations
yeah,
about like explaining why something is the way it is, or what kind of what are the mechanisms in place that made it to be that way, are so important. Just to open up, the window to see.
yeah,
Oh, that's why that's like that. That makes sense. The
yeah.
clarity is important.
Because there's like a lot of
It's missing.
things. Yeah, like these subjects get a lot more complicated. Like when people try to say though, like, why do they need a new library? And it's like, well, if you're asking that question, do you know the status of that building? Do you know the problems of it? Have you talked to your local librarians about like the repairs that it needed? Like, are you aware of all the programs that run out of it? Like, if your idea of the library is stuck in some like, mid 20th century idea of like,
Yeah.
it's a place to rent books. We have Google. Why do you need that? And I mean, this was a topic that came up when I was talking to a lot of people at the library of like, the library is an access to information, and when libraries first developed, that information was largely in the form of books. That was where our stored information was as a
Mm-hmm.
society. And now a lot of our information is like we've transitioned to like these digital societies, but or our digital libraries of information, but like we're quickly running into the information's easy to get, but how do you determine what's real? How do you determine what's factual? Google used to be fairly unbiased. Like Google's now a lot trickier. Like
Yeah.
these, like even our local librarians will have a really key role to play as facilitators to help everyday people connect to like what's actually useful, true information,
Mm-hmm.
because these AI tools are just spewing out like endless amounts of stuff that looks useful and true,
Yeah.
but has very huge biases that are trying to sway you one way or another.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of us have probably seen a headline where you like, wow, and then you want to click more, and it leads you to a website that looks very much like a news website, but it's not something you've ever heard of. And then you kind of like, is this reputable? Like what, like, it's so easy to put together things that look reputable, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
almost like if like previously people used to kind of have an idea of like, oh, it's in a book. That kind of means something. And it didn't mean everything before. Like lots of bad ideas were published in books, but at the very least, there were these filters in place of
Mm-hmm.
like a publisher had to get together and people had to agree on something, and an editor probably had to look through it. But like nowadays, one lone person can work together with ChatGPT to spew all of their weird thoughts out into the world and then put it into a wrapper of like a video that looks very professional, or a
Mm-hmm.
website that looks like kind of indistinguishable from like a CBC News article. And
Yeah.
that's a scary thought because there's a lot of the world that doesn't have any kind of media literacy, or nearly enough media literacy to not just take something like that in because it has all the semblances of what they know to be a reputable news source.
Yeah.
It just becomes a reputable news source to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to talk about teaching the children and giving them media literacy, which I don't know if we're doing enough about that. I mean, you sat on school boards and things like that, so that's a whole topic, right? But what do you do with like the other, the people my age who grew up and were tried to taught a little bit of that, but like there's no more schooling for a lot of us, that like there's no more government mandated schooling that's going to teach us those things.
Yeah.
It's just on us to do our best, right? To connect to our friends and relatives and teach
and
them.
And people don't like to listen to things they don't agree with. So that makes it challenging, right? Like, how do you break down a wall that people don't know is there?
Especially when you can easily fill your entire feed with comforting voices that you do agree with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the scary thing is like with these AI like tools, you mean we think that we're in bubbles now. We're in bubbles of like real people created stuff. Like we're going to be able to, what are we, like a few years, if not, away from, you could just surround yourself with fully generated AI content that makes you feel good, that reinforces your world belief and never, like it could alter itself on the fly to never make you feel bad, so that you never have to, you're never even tempted to change the channel because you're constantly, and for some people that might mean like never talking about news and politics, just fully escape to a world of like, if you're into sci-fi and fantasy, or you're into TV shows or sports, like sports is a huge thing where it's just like you never have to be plugged in and even think about local politics, just worry about the fun games and the sports and the like, I don't know, there's that escapism of it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really difficult to get people who don't want to be, the people that like to not be involved because it's too complicated. There's people that don't vote because they don't feel like they know enough. But like their own like lived experiences are enough. Like, what do you want? You know, these things are important, and like right from the grassroots, they need to know that. There was I did an online thing, and they were talking about just educating students, like young people, and they were walking around Alberta campuses, University of Alberta, and they just walked. It was election day, and they said, "Do you know it's an election?" And like 50% had no idea.
Yeah.
And like, well, you can go vote. And they're like, oh no, I don't know anything. It's like, well, that's true, but what do you believe? Like, what do you want? What do you want to see? Like, and it was like 50% didn't even know there was an election. So that's alarming.
And there's not all politicians would want to even do anything about that, because it
exactly.
Why would, if that's not how they win elections, then there's this idea of like, oh, every politician would want everyone to be fully informed, and it's like, well, that's not true. Like if they win because a dedicated 20% of their local population votes for them, and then another 18% votes for scattered other parties, and then the other 60% doesn't vote at all, then like that they get the power, right? Like that's how power kind of consolidates down.
Yeah, I know my stepdad used to say that if you don't vote, you can't complain. But apparently I think there's a lot more people complaining than we're voting. So I'd like to go back to that. Everybody has to vote, and then they can voice their opinion. But it's kind of hard you can't really enforce that. You can encourage it though.
Well, then you get that kind of like, it's not quite an apathy, but there's this common opinion that like spans both sides of the political spectrum. But like if you ask them, well, did you vote? And then they'd say, well, like no one's worth voting for. And then you kind of get the people who are like, well, the whole system's like, they're all a bunch of crooks. It's not even worth paying attention to any of it because it's all, this is where you get into like, oh, it's all fake news. It's all whatever. Right. And then it's like, okay, like, but you're just sort of giving up your actual ability to change the world and claiming that it's not worth changing, or there is no.
Well, and then there's this attack right now on like the school boards that's happening in Ontario. I mean, we have 5 boards taken over already, and that's scary because that's 5. Those are the 5 most populous boards too. So that's a third of students in Ontario don't have a voice, like don't have a trustee or anyone to go to if they
Yeah.
have an issue. There's nobody to help them navigate any of their, issues that they're having.
Well, as the state is finding out about how so many things about the way we think, like the quote unquote rules of our politics or their politics, weren't actual rules. They were just decorum and practices that everyone like agreed upon practices. Then they've kind of found out like, oh, if someone who comes in who just doesn't respect those things, there's no guardrails stopping them from doing whatever they want. And we're kind of discovering that, or more of us are, that like when it comes to our provincial politics, we have these things in place, like the notwithstanding clause, where it's like, oh, you can violate our human rights if you just really want to. You can just do it because we made a rule that's like supposed to be like a nuclear option, but you can just do it.
Yeah.
Oh, like that feels like a thing that was put in place just because there's this idea of like, well, it'll always be sensible, like upstanding people making those decisions.
Right.
And sometimes they might need that power, and that's okay. They'll only use it responsibly.
Yeah.
It's like, well, until they're not those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope, yeah. I mean, you talk about how you are an optimistic person. I mean, and you do have, how many kids did you say you had?
4.
4 kids. They've obviously grown up in a household that was, like, would you say that their upbringing was maybe similar to the one that you had growing up, like, at least in terms of, was politics part of the kitchen table conversation, or?
Yeah, but I would say that, like, my husband and I didn't necessarily agree.
Right.
So, like, he was brought up very Catholic and very, very business minded, and I was very open minded on all fronts. So yeah, we didn't necessarily agree. So I think the kids have benefited from having the two voices in the house, and we didn't like argue. Like we weren't passionately opposed. Obviously,
Yeah.
We got married and had 4, children who were raised, and
that's an important perspective to just get that idea of like the respectful disagreement of opinions.
Yeah,
like
they went to
being an
public school,
household.
they went to Catholic school, they went to public school. Like
Right.
we did what made sense for us at the time, and I mean they've turned out to be amazing kids, so I think it worked. Touch wood.
Are they like? Would they know it's election day?
They would, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was actually really one of the things that I just thought was an amazing thing was during my the appointment process. My son was doing, I guess it's a Discord or something, video call. So he was showing the election like online.
Oh, he was like streaming it to like a Discord group.
Yeah. And then at first it was just like, him and a couple people, and then a couple more joined. And then there was like 18 of them all on there, and the chat was going crazy. And I'm like, I made 18-year-olds excited.
Well, isn't that the thing? Like
Municipal politics. That's impressive.
like we have this technology at our fingertips that could be like, we could be having the most interesting town forum sort of, or that idea of like connecting. And this is like where it's funny, if you look at like what futurists thought the internet would do to us, that we would have this ability, like the local newspaper would be expanded and increased, and it would be like, and for like a very short period of time, it's almost like we had that, right? Where, but then we suddenly kind of found out like, yeah, but nobody wants to pay for that, and it can advertise it. Can it be supported in that way? And like everyone's going to be busy connecting and talking about other things on social media, and the social media companies aren't going to be like, it's not going to be treated like a public good or like a controlled space. It's going to actually be a private company that'll have its own agenda in place. And as we've found out, like it's tricky, but we do have all this really interesting ways of connecting, like the video calls and of the Discord servers, and it's just, how do we like thread that needle to increase public consciousness about local politics and public caring about these things. I mean, I think a big thing is like just, and it comes up in every episode, but our loss of third spaces and of community spaces. And we used to have church, and church was like the understood connector of everyone, the connector of the community. That came with a lot of bad things too, and there's a lot of negative. I'm someone who's like turned away from church, but like every year I get older, I kind of think about like, wouldn't my life be so much better if I did have a place I could take my family to every Sunday and connect with other families in the neighborhood and get an idea of how everyone's doing? And you'd kind of, there'd be a chance to kind of gossip, but it would be like positive gossip. And you'd find out like, oh, so and so lost their job. Oh, well, I know a connection to him. And like,
I remember
just
that.
all the benefits of like connecting a community together. And someone passes away and the whole community finds out about it at church and puts things together for them. And you can have interesting speakers on, and like the kids kind of grow up, like all of the benefits of what church provided without the baggage of the church part of church, right? Is like, can we build that world? Can we connect that? Like, maybe, but I don't know. Nothing is, right now we just have a lot of like, Instagram is the new, and TikTok, and these things have taken the place of that community in church. But instead of people uniting in a physical space in a building, it's isolation with your own screen in your own bedroom.
Yeah.
And you're finding a group and you're connecting to that group and it's giving you lessons, but it's that isolated, separate, disconnected. And now everyone's fracturing into like a million different little subgroups, right? Instead of being united into like united by their neighborhood, united by their faith in that sense. But I don't know. The technology gives us a lot, so maybe AI can figure out some ways to solve these problems for us.
I don't know. I heard that you can send $250 to AI and it'll make you like tens of thousands of dollars in like 2 weeks. I just read that. Sounds legit.
Yeah. That definitely sounds like a good investment strategy. So we've kind of gone on a big kind of tangent here.
Yeah.
I had a couple more questions for you, but for the remainder of your term, what are your biggest priorities for Ward 6? And do you have any ideas how you're going to kind of measure that progress in terms of like keeping yourself accountable to the residents of that ward?
Like I have a year, right, to prove that I belong here. So
I know it's a big question.
Yeah,
and
I want to just work on connections and just really push that like clarity and communication and explaining what's happening. What can I do? What would you like me to do? Like, what can I do that will help you understand how this works, or maybe I'll go understand how it works and come back. Just all of that snowballing to like try to get people involved, I think, is my big push.
That's good.
Because there's just so much apathy. So much. But
that's the thing. That's all you can really do is try to connect to people who are taking some interest, right? Yeah. And there are a couple of members of City Council who I can't think of their names, but they do a good job of putting a lot of messaging out there on social media.
Yeah, but Ken's phenomenal. Like, Ken's newsletter is, like, professional.
Yeah, I mean, like,
it's really
you
great.
can kind of see why he's been mayor for so long in just the sense that, like...
Oh, no, sorry. I meant Ken.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Ken, my ward mate Ken.
So Ken puts out stuff, but I was going to say Cam himself does put out stuff, like, right? Yeah. Like, the successful politicians in the city are using our new technologies to connect to people.
Mm-hmm. I don't do as well there.
Yeah, you created a social media profile for yourself,
Yeah.
Has that been kind of overwhelming, though, to, like, the idea of sharing your view and like putting stuff out there as a public persona?
I don't find it overwhelming. I find it I don't know, I feel like a poser, like,
like,
it's like, look at me, here I am filming
like
myself.
You're kind of putting on a costume to
I'm not
the role play as the council person.
So it feels a bit weird.
Some of that's just like your newness to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're 4 months in.
Yeah. So at the school board, we were actually discouraged from having our own social media.
Right.
Like, I mean, personal is fine, but we weren't allowed to really...
To, like, be the person, that person on social media?
So
right.
That was very frowned upon. Not that we didn't say things that were happening in the school board, but it would be more through our personal account. I wouldn't have had a, social media for my trustee side. So making those has been... I kind of actually liked that we didn't have that and that we were a united front, and, the messaging came from the board and we could like put that out there. There wasn't individuals, right?
Because that's the tricky thing. Then it kind of becomes like it becomes like a media game of like who has the best camera, who can speak, like who's the best influencer.
Skills,
the editing of it, like the networking, but the social media networking part of it, like it's an interesting wrinkle to it.
Yeah. So that's definitely not my strong point.
Yeah.
But it's not really how I want to connect with people anyways. And I did, and they just launched the campaign school launch the other day. And that was really great. But they did talk about how social media is kind of just, it's a thing that you kind of have to have because it's like checking a box. But does it have to be like your big thing? Maybe
Well,
not.
that's what's so, like,
these days. There's so much, right?
I worked in marketing and communications for quite a while, and it's weird how new all this stuff still is.
Yeah.
But it only took like a couple years of Facebook existing before companies started to feel that way, where they're like, well, yeah, you have to have this. You have to check this box. You have to do that. And it's like, but then our social media just became inundated with companies putting out their company messaging. And then people started to reject that because it became like, well, I don't want my Facebook feed to just be like indistinguishable from listening to like radio commercials or whatever, right?
Right.
Like, because that feels inauthentic. And then like, I think now a lot of companies are starting to rethink like, well, do we need a Twitter or X account, for example? Like, because then you have to start like these platforms are no longer neutral anymore. So it's not even just like, they're not the town hall anymore. It starts to say something about your politics, like what platforms you engage in. And then it's like, well, there's just this idea of like, is it as necessary as we thought, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it actually engaging with the public, or are there other ways of doing it?
Yeah.
Like a lot of them are like just returning to in-person town halls and encouraging that more than anything.
And my interactions at the school level has been great, and just having those conversations and keeping those connections going as well has been really great. And I do like just organically going to the school fundraiser, going to this, and just meeting people and talking like the old grassroots kind of, but like real. It's just personal and real, and it's, the social media for me is it seems fake to me, but
and it largely and increasingly is actually fake, like is actually just not real, real opinions, not real comments, not even real people, right? And I wonder if that could be a side benefit of all this explosion of AI, is that it's going to mean you can't trust anything on a screen, so therefore everything on a screen will kind of just become like inconsequential fluff, and therefore you have to do it in person for it to be real. You have to connect in person, because like, yeah, you could see a video about something and read 300 comments about whatever, but if it's almost guaranteed that there's no way to know if it's real, then it's going to become worthless.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
What's the best way for Ward 6 residents to connect with you?
Phone.
Yeah.
Well, like texting is amazing.
Yeah.
But phone and email. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you, I don't know if you want to share your email address and phone on the podcast with,
I totally
with people.
can. I don't know it though. so the email's easy. It's just Katherine.Hauser@guelph.ca.
Okay, perfect. I can put that in the show notes if people want to connect with you there.
And what's my phone number? There it is. 226-821-1126. Isn't that nice?
Phone number? Yeah. There's a symmetricality to it.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know why I can't remember it.
So, speaking of like kind of being inundated though with like calls and comments and stuff like that, do you have some sort of sense of like how are you going to ensure that you hear like a wide range of voices and not just like the loudest voices?
Basically, I'm just giving everyone the same airtime right now.
Yeah.
There's not too many. That's not true. There are the voices that are loud on their specific topics.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just that topic, right?
And that's just the nature of local politics, right? Like,
yeah.
people are interested in their pet projects, and some people are going to care a lot about like local sports, and then that's going to, they're going to speak on those things.
They're passionate about that thing because it affects them, so it is important. So right now, I'm not overwhelmed by voices. I'm really, like I said, I say yes to everything. Like, if you call me and you want to meet with me, I'll go meet with you.
You said yes to this podcast, so yeah. I mean, and this is, I'm not necessarily media, but whatever you want to call what new podcasts are. I'm a person, I have a sort of a platform, and you've agreed to talk on it and share more than an hour of your thoughts. So yeah, I guess thanks to you for generously sharing your time to connect with with people and with to the Guelph audience? Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with? I feel like we covered a lot, but is there anything
Well, I was really like, this makes me nervous, like this kind of a setup, but like one-on-one, I love that. So I would, feel free to reach out anytime, any issues. I'd love to, either if I don't know the answer, I'll find out the answer. Probably I won't know the answer right away, but...
I know the microphones and that can be intimidating. I mean, I should say you haven't come across as nervous, but I know it is different when you're speaking into a microphone. You know your words are being recorded, and there's just that idea of like, oh, can I be taken out of context? Am I going to be clipped and edited and whatever? But I will say that's the kind of the nice thing about like a long form podcast like this is that like I don't post, like I put one social media clip out for each episode, but for the most part, people who are interested are going to sit in and like listen to an entire conversation, and it's not like little sound bites. So you do get, and that's partly why I wanted to do a podcast, is 'cause like podcasts are nice for that. Like it's not even like a, even like a radio interview where it's like they have 5 minutes of someone's time, and it's like, can you get to know anyone in that amount of time? Or like it's not a really human way of connecting. But I find just like a long form conversation, sit down, like it's a human experience and a human way of sharing. But
I also found it intimidating because I didn't think that it's the whole imposter syndrome, right? Like, I don't know if I have enough to talk about for an hour. What am I going to talk about? But
well, we found things to talk about to fill the time. So thanks so much, Catherine, for coming in and sharing your voice.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Growing Guelph. I've been your host, Jordan Sloggett. Be sure to subscribe to us on social media, on your favorite podcast app, and if you have a recommendation for a future guest you'd like me to speak to, you can reach out to me at growingguelph@gmail.com.